But this here is on the mark, like a spiral from a 5-star recruit. We throwing darts, really focused. WD-40 couldn't stop the way we grind it. In the trenches, putting that work in. I relate to all my linemen. This is for the men. The boys do not belong here. Tiptoeing to the top, we doing cone drills. The hottest show in the world, you don't even gotta search. Steady putting in work, you see the sweat up on my shirt. They wasn't aware of us at first, we wasn't on their radar. Now every play that we make, they gon' say similar to a razor blade, we gon' stay sharp. The news ain't official if it's not on the mark.
What it do? It's Wednesday. You know what's up, man. We're here with the On Your Mark Show, powered and sponsored by Epic Sports Apparel. Every player compete live from the Fishbowl Radio Network. Man, we are in the middle of the high school season right now. Of course, that's, the majority of what I'm busy with right now. I got a big-time guy coming out of San Antonio area. This is an area of coverage that a lot of times we don't get a chance to talk about. But my guy, Josh Butler, is one of those guys that's been entrenched in this game for a little while. He's a scout for Prep Redzone, Texas. He also works with SMU in the Rivals Network with Yahoo Sports as well. And he's one of those guys that's plugged into that area. We're going to talk about that a little bit. Also talk about, some of the things that, JB works with kids and helping them get exposure and getting to the next level. Of course, we'll talk to my guy, Stephon Johnson, on the road again. My guy from Coast to Coast Athletics and Epic Sports Apparel. But listen, before we talk to JB, before we talk to Josh Butler, it's that time of year. Shout out to my guy behind the ones and twos. Listen, last year we won Guppy of the Year. That means we were the new kid on the block. But this year, listen, the Guppy Awards are back up. You get a chance to vote for your boy, vote for this show right here on the Fishbowl Radio Network. We want to be number one at everything we do because we want to educate and elevate you right here like we do every week. But listen, it's time for y'all to jump in and vote for your boy, man. Go to the Fishbowl Radio Network website and click and like and listen. Show of the year, male host of the year. We want them all, man. You know what I'm saying? We were the best new show on the network last year, but listen, we coming for the title, man. Shout out to all the great shows on the network, man, here that we tune into each week. But listen, I'm a competitor. I want to be number one at everything I do, and I definitely want to tap into that. And listen, we'll be making some posts and stuff about that. It just opened up yesterday, but listen, we want the title, man. We want the chain. We want to get it done, man. Go and vote for the On Your Mark show right here on the Fishbowl Radio Network. But listen, man, let's chop it up with my guy JB, Josh Butler, down in San Antonio. JB, what's good, man? Appreciate you joining me.
What's up, brother?
Man,
yes, sir, man. I appreciate you having me.
Man, making time. You know what it is. But
yes, sir.
Listen, man, I want first before we get into what we're going to talk about today, I always like for guests to kind of let everybody know how you got into what you're doing. How you got into media scouting. You cover camps and everything, etc. And you've been doing it for a while, all over the state of Texas. I know you're in the San Antonio region, but talk about that a little bit and how you got into it.
Sure. So, I have two young boys. Even myself, growing up, obviously was an athlete, a football player. The reason I got into it is just because San Antonio has just been overlooked for quite some time. We have so much talent down here, and it's just overshadowed, and rightfully so. It's overshadowed by cities like Houston and Dallas and even Austin at times. So for me, it was just I need to do whatever I can to kind of shine some light out here on some of these boys in San Antonio. There's people like B. Damone, R.L. Martin, Mike over at 2MG that have been doing it as well. And it's good just to have an addition because, it takes a village. You look at Houston and Dallas, there's a lot of y'all covering those areas. So San Antonio needs the same. So that's why I just wanted to be able to step up and help out where I could.
Absolutely. Listen, we talk about these kind of things all the time. San Antonio is an area that's kind of slept on when it comes to coverage, and those guys really getting the exposure that they need. And there's a lot of great teams down there, a lot of great players, and the proof is in the pudding that you guys are helping those guys get to the next level. But you mentioned,
Sure.
Shout out to B. Damone, R.L. Martin, Mike, yourself down there in the San Antonio area, 2MG. 2MGE. Those guys do a lot of great things for the high school kids down there, and even in the youth environment down there. But that's the reason I kind of wanted you to come on today and reached out, because we're kind of at the midway point. Things are starting to bubble. We're deep in district play around the state, and I kind of keep a watch on there. Of course, you and I kind of work together hand in hand throughout the season and in the off season, and kind of communicate and see things. I wanted to get you in on that because it's kind of starts to be some moving pieces down there. You know what I'm saying? And you were at a game last week that was critical to some district play down there. So talk about the game that you were at last week.
Man, so that's San Antonio Piper, which is a new school, a newer school, I should say. They went deep in the playoffs last year. And Smithson Valley, which is a powerhouse often in the state of Texas. So really, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but that was pretty much most likely the district championship. Let me put it that way. That's how important that game was to both teams. And it was a shootout. Throughout. It was a wild game. There were some odd scoring plays, like a safety on a kickoff where the young man didn't call a fair catch and they kneeled the ball, but he stepped back in. Just plays that you don't see. And I remember I went and talked to one of the refs, and I said, have you guys seen this type of scoring game before? And they said, we were just talking over the headsets, over the radios, and we just said, whatever can happen will happen tonight, and it sure did. It was a great game. It came down, I think, with 5 minutes left. Piper was up by 5, and Smithson Valley came back and went up by 4 with 2 minutes left. And Piper again didn't give up. They kept pushing. Caden Keith, which is their quarterback, connected with Evan Drake quite a bit, coming down the stretch with the last minute. He hit him on a 3rd down, which was big on the sideline in traffic, and Evan caught the ball for a 1st down. Within the next 2 plays, Evan Drake, again, a 6'5" tight end out of Piper, got loose, and he caught the game-winning pass, and that was all she wrote, pretty much. The Smithson Valley Rangers had a chance to pull it out with about a minute left, and they couldn't get down to tie the game up with a field goal, and that was it, man. So you can pretty much chalk Piper up to winning that district, which is going to be a tough district. They're 5-0 right now. They're 2-0 in district play. They have some electric players out there. They got Isaiah Champagne that came in from Louisiana last year, and he's a receiver, and that kid can do it all. He played all last year with a cast on his hand and still had over 1,000 yards. So I've never seen a receiver, and I don't know if you have, wear a cast and still have over 1,000 yards, but he did it. He's great. Caden Keith, the quarterback, does a great job. I think he's over 1,000 yards already, but he is just consistent. I think he's over 70% in his passing completion percentage. So he's great, man. They have a little crew of running backs, John Hamilton and Brady Hopper, and they complement each other well. And their defense is led by a beast named Thor Mickelbust. This kid is a DN. They play a 3-3-5. This kid plays DN. He's 6'4", 250, and he's all motor. That kid can go. He'll be able to pick whatever school he wants to go to when it's all said and done. So with a name like Thor Mickelbust, you got to be a beast. So yeah.
Absolutely. Now let's talk about Piper a little bit. They're undefeated right now in the 5A ranks. Shout out to B. Damone. I'm looking at the San Antonio rankings. He's got Piper, Alamo Heights, John Jay, New Braunfels, Southwest, Smithson Valley, which is a surprise to me, 3-2, Kerrville, Tivy, Legacy, South San, and Bernie rounding out the top 10. But Caden Keith, this is a guy that you've really been high on. I've had a chance to see a lot of his film, a lot of his stuff coming into his senior season. He's kind of getting, I wouldn't say slept on, but just looked over in the sense that, the colleges haven't come calling. But he's got all of the skill set and requisite requirements for the quarterback position at the next level. You've been on the fence for this guy. Talk about him a little bit.
So he passes the eye test, and he's 6'3", nearly 200 pounds. He runs about a 4.6. and he's got a big arm, high IQ kid, very respectful. And he's a student of the game, which is a big deal for me as far as quarterbacks are concerned. He trains with one of the top quarterback coaches in Central Texas, which is Yale Vinoy, and he's just got it. But I'll tell you what, he is slept on, and I do believe that he's been overlooked, and there's a reason for it. He transferred to Southside last year, San Antonio Southside, which, you know, it's not a huge program, so again, you're not going to get all of the exposure you would get, you know, when you're out here at Piper or Smith and Valley or Steele or, you know, whatever it is. So he did kind of get looked over, but he got some tape. He got varsity tape, and it looked good. Now coming over to Piper, which is a very high-powered offense with their offense coordinator, Coach Ortega, he runs, you know, I mean, it's spread, right? And he's got 5 wide, and he can pick them apart. And that offensive line that he has is just, they're beasts. They call themselves the herd, and those dudes, they can hurt some people, right? So, I mean, they give him plenty of time, and he picks defenses apart. Very heady guy. I think that he will start getting some offers after this win against Smith and Valley. I think that kind of puts it over to say that, yes, he is the real deal, because he's shown it week in and week out. So the hope is that they'll finally break the seal and let this kid start getting some of the offers that he deserves.
Yeah, I think he checks off all the boxes, definitely. But, you know, with the recruiting game, when they get kind of a late start like that, you know, it kind of comes back tough. But I mean, he's easily going to get some group of 5 offers or something should be coming his way for sure. And to have Piper sitting at 5-0 in that competitive area in 5A down in San Antonio is definitely something to say.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Agreed.
Absolutely. Now, you know, the team that's really been showing up here the last few years is Cibolo Steel down in that area.
Mm-hmm.
And B. Damone has them sitting at the one spot in 6A with Brennan, East Central, Buda Johnson, Harlan, Reagan, Johnson, Taft, Churchill, and Sotomayor. Sotomayor,
yeah.
Sotomayor. You see, JB lives down there. He got it together. You know what I'm saying? This is why I tap in with my guy. You know what I'm saying? But
yes, sir.
Let's talk about Steele a little bit. They made it all the way to the semifinals, lost to Summer Creek, and you know they got a guy that kind of, you know, is in the Caden Keith conversation as far as, you know, he was slept on to an extent, but Chad Warner's one of those guys that's, you know, and you and I know, he's got a thorough background going all the way back to his Little League days. This guy's been
That's right. Yeah, he does.
He's been groomed for this moment. Chad Warner's one of those guys in the state of Texas that's known. He's got Steele sitting right back at the doorstep to get back to the playoffs and make a deep run. But this team is loaded. You got Jonathan Hatton. You got Jalen Cooper and those guys. This is a team that I definitely believe that can make some noise. Tell me what you've seen from Steele this year.
Well, I'll tell you what, man. That team is just chock full of D1 talent. Some of you'll go through that roster and you'll go down and you say, "Well, I'm not necessarily sure who these kids are," but then you click on them and sure enough, they have 5, 6, 7 offers from you know, G5 schools and up P4s. So, man, there's a lot of talent in that area, right? So, Chad Warner, like you said, has his dad has done a great job with him, bringing him up through Pop Warner, Taifa, and what, you know, with the Outlaws and so on and so forth. The guy is just he's been a quarterback his whole life, right? And he shows it. I think he's got a 74% completion percentage right now. He's got 18 touchdowns and over 1,300 yards passing. He's got some good people to throw it to also, right? I mean, you got Royal Capel, which is a D1 commit, and you got Jalen Cooper, which is an SMU commit. Both of those guys are sitting at over 530 yards, and they have 8 and 9 touchdowns respectively. So when you have that type of weapons, it's hard not to do well, but it also shines a light on you if you don't do well. Chad has been able to shoulder that, and he's done a good job. Jonathan Hatton, which you mentioned before, is just a huge back. He's committed to Oklahoma, and he's just a junior, and he is an absolute beast. 8 yards per carry, 10 touchdowns, and over 600 rushing yards so far. And the kid is big, and the thing is this kid is fast. I mean, track fast, right? So it's nice to see him get out in the open and get loose. So Steele, they're 4-1. They're 1-0 in district, and that one loss came to Austin Westlake, which is obviously a nationally ranked team right now. If you go back and look at some of the Max Preps and some of these other national rankings, so they didn't lose to some no-name team. It was Austin Westlake. It was a tough game, and but they bounced back. They went and beat up on their buddies Clemens, which is also right by Cibolo in Shirts, 55-12, and that's their third 50-point game. So those guys can put up numbers in bunches, and they have. And I think that going forward, that one smack in the mouth from Austin Westlake kind of woke them up and kind of woke up a sleeping giant. So they'll have a good run the rest of this district and into the playoffs.
Absolutely, yeah. I saw that. Westlake was coming off, their first loss at home to Atascocita the week before, so they were kind of trying to right the ship there. And when I saw that score, that kind of raised my eyebrows a little bit because Steele had been rolling. I don't think they had a regular season loss in the last couple of years, going up until when they met Summer Creek last year. So, I think that says a little bit about Westlake as well, and the strength between San Antonio and Central Texas, because a lot of those times, we talked about that already. These teams kind of get overlooked and overshadowed by the DFW and the Houston area, and these guys actually, play meaningful football in December and November. So, that's the big thing that you want to see from these guys. But talk to me about a few more teams that you've seen so far, midway through the season down in San Antonio that kind of got your attention.
Sure. So you already talked about some of them: Brennan, East Central, Alamo Heights, John Jay. These are people that B. Damone put on his tops list. I have them on my tops list as well. East Central's kind of one of these underdog stories. They're not a perennial powerhouse by any means. They're, as a matter of fact, they're just barely looking for their second winning season in the past 10 years. But their quarterback, Isaiah Mackey, kind of has them on the right track right now. He's got 15 total touchdowns. He's got over 1,000 total yards with like 700 plus passing and 300 plus rushing. So the kid can do it all. He's a pretty dynamic player. You have two backs that they have over there rushing, and they're doing well. Is Myron Robinson. It's gotten like 9.5 yards per carry, over 200 yards, and then you have Zachariah Jones also over 250 yards rushing. So those guys are doing a good job. They're 4-1, and they're 1-0 in district. So again, that's a team to keep an eye on. But guess who they're playing this week? They're playing Steele. So a tough test. But they're probably going to get up for that game, and I know Steele is still kind of in bounce back mode, so they're going to want to make sure that they take East Central down. Another one we have in 6A here in San Antonio is Brennan, another team that is in the playoffs every year. Coach Baser has done a great job out there. They have a pretty dynamic quarterback themselves in Caden Glass with 500 plus passing yards, 150 plus rushing yards, and 5 total touchdowns. He reminds me kind of just like the Cardinals quarterback in the NFL, Murray, and he's just a good kid, man. He's another student of the game. He throws a good ball, and he makes room for himself to get the ball off. They have a running back, Makai Thompson. That's another track speed guy. He's great in open field, but he can make you miss in between the tackles at 400 plus yards, 7 yards per carry, and 7 total touchdowns. So that young man has done a great job out there. And then their defense is led by Dylan Avalos, which is a defensive tackle, and that kid's a stud as well. So those two 6A teams, and then one more that I'll speak on real quick is Alamo Heights, and that team is led by the number 1 athlete in the nation, Michael Terry, and he's just been a monster. He's scored From quarterback, he's scored at running back, he's scored at receiver. The guy can do it all, right? So he has over as a team they have over 800 yards rushing, and Michael has 7 total touchdowns. So they're 5-0 and they're 1-0 in district. So they are a team to watch. They got Harlandale this week, and I'm sure that's going to be another dub for them.
Absolutely. Michael Terry is phenomenal. I just was finishing up an article on hornsports.com. Texas, Nebraska, and Oregon are really leading the charge for him. I think he was at the most recent Texas home game, and Texas is really in on this guy. But I had a chance to meet Mike, and I had him on the show a long time ago. I have to really go back and look at it. I think he was in the 9th grade, and he was playing down there in 707 with my guys down there. This kid is electric, and you mentioned him being able to do multiple things from multiple positions. He kind of fits wherever you want. He's that plug and play type of guy. You know what I'm saying? Yep. Talk about Michael Terry a little bit. You've had a chance to see him for a number of years up close and personal.
Yeah, man. So I mean, he's that guy. He really is. When they say I'm him, that dude's him, right? I mean, He's played every position he's asked to play, and he plays it at an exceptional level. And that's on both sides of the ball. So that's not just offense, right? So he can be your shutdown corner. He can be your linebacker. I mean, he does it all, right? So the only thing I can say for Michael Terry is that I hope with all my heart that he goes to UT, and that's just me being a fan. But he can choose, right? He can go wherever he wants because he's really that guy, and he's just been raised properly, and he's just a great kid, and you love to be able to see kids that are that high level be such a good kid. So he's a good young man, and I'm glad that San Antonio has someone like him highlighting the city.
Absolutely. He's got Alamo Heights sitting at 5-0. They've been a perennial playoff team coming out of that area for years. In the 5A ranks, and they're sitting at the top right now. And if things can continue to trend in that direction, they're going to be sitting pretty good. He could make a trip to Jerry World. You know what I mean? And that would be great.
Yep.
Where we get a chance to see him up close and personal. But before we get out of here, JB, I know you do a lot of things, on the recruiting background. Trying to help kids get to the next level, mentoring kids. Talk about a little bit, because here on Your Mark Show, we talk weekly about, proper exposure, things that kids need to do. And you're on the fence for this, and you're a guy that, represents the player and helps parents and players, in your area and all over the state, really, and mentor those guys. Talk to me a little bit about recruiting and things that kids and parents should be knowing to try to get, that exposure to get to the next level, to be seen by college coaches.
Sure. Let me kind of preface this by somebody you brought up earlier, and Coach Johnson that you're going to talk to later.
Absolutely.
He wrote a book, and it's on Amazon, if I'm not mistaken.
It is.
So if anybody is listening, it's a great book. It's a great read. But I'll kind of give you a breakdown of my thought process on the main items that I think a parent and an athlete can do to help the start of being able to get exposure, right? So the first things first is that if you're not on social media, you're not on the radar, okay? So I can't tell you how many times I've been at games and I want to highlight somebody, and I say, hey, and I'll be on the sideline with them, and I look and I'm like, hey, I mean, for some reason I'm not following this guy. I need to figure out, what his name is on X or Instagram or what have you. And I'll ask, hey, what's your X or what's your Twitter or whatever, and they, I don't have one. Well, if you don't have one, and I want to get you this exposure, how am I going to do that?
Right.
Word of mouth is only so much right now. You need to be on the screen. You need to be seen, right? So if you don't have that social media, you need to start it now. And the earlier, the better, So we talked about both of us being with Prep Redzone. Prep Redzone has Prep Redzone Next. And Prep Redzone Next is geared towards middle school kids, getting out in front of companies like where we're at with Rivals, 247, On3. So Prep Redzone Next allows those kids to get that exposure earlier in order to kind of bolster later, right? So they need to be on there. And if they have that social media presence in a middle school, by the time they get to high school, they'll have a pretty decent following, and you should be obviously following coaches, and I'll get into that. But you have to, number one, you have to be on social media. It's a different era. I know that a lot of myself, you, Coach Johnson, we grew up in a time where it was videotapes, some maybe DVDs that we had to send coaches. Now it's all a click of the mouse, right? So you have to be able to have that for these coaches to see you. Otherwise, you don't exist. And that's the sad truth. And there's too many kids, and there's too many athletes for these coaches to try to chase you down to figure out that you actually exist. So make it easier for them and be on social media. The other thing, social media, when you're on there, how do you present yourself? What are you listing? You got to list your height, your weight, your skill set, where you go to school, what is your graduating class. These are all things that your NCAA ID, your grade point average. These are things that coaches are going to ask you for anyway. So you definitely want to make sure that you're holding yourself in a high regard when you're on there, and it's a respectable page, and that you're not sitting here liking things that most likely are questionable. You want to keep that page as if a coach is in front of you. So keep it respectable. Add coaches, add other players. If you see a player that's getting some love from schools that you like, man, add that player. Reach out to him. Ask him, hey, what is it that you're doing, or who is it that you're speaking with? That's all this is about is networking, right? That's what recruiting is nowadays. Is a big network, and you have to be able to get out and get it. Lastly, the one thing that I'll say is you have to be proactive. Right? So there's questionnaires that every school has, and for them to know you, whether or not you have a social media presence, for them to know you, you need to kind of get on those questionnaires. You have to go fill them out and let them know who you are, what you're doing, and who your family is, your phone numbers, what classes you're taking, all types of different stuff, right? And that way, when you get to these camps, they know who you are already. And they may keep an eye on you while you're at that camp, whereas there may be another guy right next to you that's just as good, but they don't know who he is because he didn't fill that questionnaire out, right? So there's a lot of stuff that you can do as an athlete or as a parent to be proactive in order to help yourself be seen. And then once you get to the point where, okay, I'm finally being seen, then you start dialing it in to the places and the universities, the colleges that you want to go to, and start adding, that coaching staff and sending messages to that coaching staff, so on and so forth. So there's a lot into it. It's not as cut and dry as it used to be back in the day when we were growing up. But the good thing is that everything's over the computer. You have the ability to do it, and if you don't, well, that's just you being lazy. I hate to say that, but you can do anything you want to do with any university you want to do. You have the contact. You can get out. You can get your name out there. Social media is there. So I won't go on and on, but Coach Johnson has a great book on Amazon. I think maybe
the Recruiting
plug
Blueprint
that again today.
Absolutely.
That's right. The Recruiting Blueprint. He should plug that again.
Absolutely.
But man, that's what it is, man. It's just being proactive.
Absolutely, and that's one reason I wanted to get you to speak about that, because you're boots on the ground with it. You're one of those guys, similar to me. You're at a game every week. You in the off season you're camping, as well as shout out to my guy Ryder Allison Butler, man. That's one of the top 2028 linebackers down in that area. You're gonna know that name if you don't already know. That's my guy. Shout out to my guy. You're not only doing that, but you're doing it from a parent's perspective as well, and I think that's
absolutely
that's what makes you what you do very special. And then, hey, we talking. This is my guy. You know what I'm saying? And when I say it's my guy,
Yes, sir.
that's what I mean. But before we get you out of here, give out your social medias where anybody can find you. And man, listen, we're gonna do this again probably right before the playoffs or right when the playoffs start. See who's coming out of the SA.
Yes, sir. We'll do that. You guys can reach me on X at jbutler_210. So jbutler_210. That's where you'll find me. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. My DMs are open. I have kids reaching out all the time, and I don't ask fees or anything else. The game is told for me. It's not sold, and I'm just trying to be able to help where I can. So please reach out. Mark, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It was fun.
Absolutely, man. We're going to do it again, JB. Appreciate it, man. We're going to take a small break here on the On Your Mark Show, live from the Fishbowl Radio Network. And we're going to tap in with my guy, Coach Johnson, talk a little H-Town football and a little high school football before we get out of here, right here from the Fishbowl Radio Network. For uniforms for your baseball team, your softball team, maybe even your basketball team, or either you want to look lightning fast on the track, holla at Epic Sports Apparel. We can get you that gear that you need to be epic. Every play you compete. Do you just wake up and go hard? Do you rewrite the narrative? Follow Epic Sports Apparel on Twitter at IamEpic247, on Instagram at Every Play I Compete, and on Facebook at Epic Sports Apparel. Rewrite your narrative. Just wake up and go hard. Be epic. All right, man. We're back right here on the On Your Mark Show, powered and sponsored by Epic Sports Apparel. Every Play I Compete. Got my guy, Coach Jay, in the building. Coach Jay, what it do?
What's good? Glad to be back.
Oh, yeah, man. Never left. You know what I'm saying? Always on the road, always doing your thing, man. Always out here trying to help people, man. Got to talking to my guy, Josh Butler, down in San Antonio. And he talked about the recruiting blueprint and how well it's doing. Talk about that a little bit. You've gotten rave reviews about this, and Josh is deep in the recruiting game and covers high school sports just like we do. And when guys like us definitely read that and use that as a handbook, then it should be an easy sell for parents and players to get to it. Talk about that a little bit.
No, sir. Josh, and appreciate him for, giving us some love on the book and actually using it as a resource. Josh is doing a great job, like you said, in the San Antonio area. For those kids, they're very fortunate to have him. The blueprint is doing great. I would love for it to do a little bit more. The biggest thing right now is parents need to understand that recruiting is constantly changing. Like now, there are changes that are coming up with the NCAA, and everything is a trickle-down effect. So the changes that happen now are going to affect the kids in 2026, 2027, and beyond. So unless they're on the internet, really scouring and reading and being up on this information, it's important to have outlets to get to that information that can help guide you. Not every kid is going to be recruited the same. We already discussed that many times, and not every kid's situation is going to look identical when it comes to recruiting. They're not going to be recruited the same way, nor the same schools, things of that nature. So just having different resources, and the blueprint is just another resource that parents can add to their toolbox when it comes to really understanding the genesis of what recruiting looks like now, and that's important.
Well, you mentioned some of the changes that are coming, and we tend to pay attention to these type of things because we're constantly watching things. We're constantly talking to people and parents, and have these conversations with people weekly. It's really changed in the last 2 weeks with the quarterback from UNLV, one of his teammates, and then I think a DB from SMU just decided to, stop playing after a few games. They want a red shirt, and what that enables them to do is to go into December and get in the portal. Talk about that a little bit. That's a big change that's coming. I think that's the first time it's being done, and it's really sending a ripple effect in college football right now.
That is definitely something that is a trickle down from directly tied to NIL.
Absolutely.
And from everything, we've seen and heard, is a direct correlation of, things being promised NIL wise, and then those things not coming to fruition. And, players are like, hey, my value, they're using it as leverage to say either pay me or pay me more. And those things have been happening, Mark, over the last year or two.
Right.
They're just not public knowledge.
Right.
Kids haven't went to this drastic of a step to say, give me or I'm going to.
Right.
And of course, people look at it, in different ways, but just, outside looking in, that's why it's important for parents with kids that are going into college or that are pursuing, to understand what those things look like, what the NIL looks like. A kid, being able to say, you know what, you're not giving me what I need to. I'm going to sit down and utilize the transfer portal, in a couple of months. And it's almost like saying we're going on strike, right? It is definitely, we can see that there are going to be some changes made, whether it's, through legislation or, the NCAA is going to make some kind of sweeping change to kind of help figure this thing out, because the NIL is still very new and still highly unregulated to a certain extent. So, this could be a huge thing that continues to happen, this year, going into the spring, going into next year. So it's going to be very interesting, to watch, to see, who else uses this as leverage and how the NCAA responds. One more thing that's coming up is NCAA profit sharing, roster number changes. They're talking about doing away with walk-ons.
Right.
So that's going to be a huge effect, to a lot of kids in the high school realm of playing ball. And we don't know how many schools it's going to affect yet until those changes are made. But we do know those changes are coming. So just, things to keep an eye on, Mark.
Well, I think taking the walk-ons is going to be significant, not just in giving, colleges depth, but also, those are practice bodies that they won't have. But it also takes away a spot for a guy that's really not, ready to be on scholarship, or a guy that's want to take a chance to work his way up. So all of those things are going to play a big part in it. And I think that's something that, I think that they're already starting to prepare for that, and especially at the Power 4, Power 5 level, and probably Group of 5 where they have those numbers. Those staffs and those coaches are already starting to prepare to that, and they have people in those particular departments that study and break down things like that. And college football is changing week to week. We just talked about how the NIL is changing. Players in order to they have that leverage, and in a sense, I agree with the players that they have to have that leverage. But coach, we come from a different brand or a different breed as far as team concept. I think that's you're leaving your team kind of high and dry a little bit, and some people may differ about that. But when you're counting on a guy, especially if he's a starter, and all of a sudden money comes up. This is where it starts to, college football starts to lose its amateurism a little bit. Talk about that a little bit.
No, absolutely. We come from that, thing was you start it, you finish it. But looking at both sides of the coin, and again, I don't know the details of the kid at UNLV, but just from everything that I'm reading and understanding is that he was promised a certain amount of money before getting on campus, and he hadn't received any of that money during the season. Again, this is, what's being said, or he received a small portion of it. And based on those promises, I guess his family felt like that it would be best to hold the school accountable.
Absolutely.
And the coaching staff accountable. Now, is that something that, the masses or you and I would approve of? I would tell my son, no, you stick it out and, finish the year, and then we make a decision, after that. But you started it, you finished it. And again, we could do a deeper dive into, the legalities behind, the promises that are being made. And, everybody's like, why didn't he have a contract? You can't sign a contract, NIL contract until you get on campus.
Right.
If you're not there, if you're not, already at the school when the negotiation stuff happens, and unfortunately, again, it is business. Sometimes, things are said that aren't always going to happen the way it's being said. So if a coach were to say, hey, we're promising you this much, he may not have been straightforward as to say, it's not going to happen right away. But of course, if you tell a kid that, he may not decide to come.
Right. Right.
So, it's just, it's one of those tricky things of, how do you hold someone accountable for their promises, and at the end of the day, who's right, who's wrong in that situation.
Absolutely.
So that is really, that's a tough one, but we know from where we came from, the only thing to do is finish it out and deal with it, as you come.
Absolutely. I playing devil's advocate on the flip side, you have to know your worth, pay like you weigh. And, kudos for him for making a step out and betting on himself, because he came from Holy Cross to UNLV, and he's been playing well. He bet on himself to move up, in conferences to go to UNLV, but he bet on himself again. So, the bravery and the gall and the balls, honestly, to do it, I think it says, kudos to him for doing it. But, on the flip side, coaches and players, and when you commit to something, that's the thing. You commit to it when you sign on the dotted line.
Absolutely. And that goes both ways.
Absolutely.
And that's
they committed to him. They
of,
didn't hold up. So, the school has got to be on the hook for that as well. I agree with you.
So that is where that gray area is always going to be, weird in a sense, because the kid is going to be the one that honestly probably gets alienated more than the staff, because, he's the one that basically quit on the team. But he's like, you guys promised me something, didn't deliver, so why should I? Again, that's probably the mindset of why he's, doing it the way that he's doing it. But I wonder how this is going to affect him going into the portal, because now coaching staffs are going to say, well, what happens if he don't get his way here?
Right.
Is that something that, we want to involve ourselves in? So, kids have to be careful when you take those kind of stands, because it could be a Colin Kaepernick type situation where it's your last.
Right.
So you have to be willing to understand that by doing that, that could be the end.
Right.
So, be
I
careful
totally
in
agree.
those situations, because, truth be told, any other staff that's looking at you, yes, you're a valuable asset.
But they're gonna wonder if you're quitting on them.
They're gonna wonder, can I depend on you throughout? So any kid that's parent that's thinking that that's in that process, again, weigh your options heavily, because that move could potentially be your last.
Absolutely, man. Shout out to my guy, Coach Miller, over at SAGU. He brought up a great point. Make an NIL trust or cap the amount. He thinks that'll help. Most kids are making life-changing decisions without life-changing money, meaning they're coming into a lot of money and they don't know how to deal with it. That's where you have to have your circle.
We said this.
Yeah, we talked we talked about this earlier this year. Your circle has to be tight when it comes to those decisions. Talk about it, Coach.
No, absolutely. And the most important thing, again, is, people got to understand that you're expecting 17, 18, 19-year-old guys to go into a situation that most have never been into and handle these kind of grown men decisions where someone in their 30s being put in that situation will still need guidance.
Absolutely.
Of not being in that.
Yeah.
So that's what we always talk about, the empowering of student athletes early with the mindset and the tools, and then on the back end of that to be able to have an outlet. Like all of my guys that are in college will call me, hey, coach, this is what's coming up. This is what the coaches are saying. How should I handle it? And I give them different real life scenarios and say, you pick which one is best for you. But if you say this 9 times out of 10, this is going to happen. If you don't say, so having someone that can really assist you and give you a good understanding of not being emotional about every decision you make, because college football, college sports is business. You can't have your emotions tied to it. So you got to take a step back and look at things from a level-headed perspective and understand that business, you have to move at a certain pace. You have to move in a different way. But when you get emotional, then that could put you in a situation where everything is removed from you because you didn't handle your business correctly, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah, it's business now, versus 10 years ago. Big-time college football, and really any college football, but, when we look at the Power 4 level, it's a business, a big, big business, and you have to conduct yourself like a business because you are a Fortune 500 company when you're out there playing. You know what I mean? You have to look at it like that. And I think, like you said, an 18, 19-year-old making these kind of decisions, I know when I was that age, I wouldn't have been able to make it if you put a bunch of money in my pocket, because the little money I did have, I didn't do the responsible things that I should have been doing. How do you expect them to really do that and be, fruitful and frugal about it and be concise and consistent in what they're doing? It's just hard. And you have to have those people around you. Someone around you that's advising you and doing the right way, because you don't want, you don't want these kids to be taken advantage of by the wrong person. And I think that's where we're at right now. Not to saying that people are doing that, but you have to be careful in who you associate yourself with and who you make these big investments with. That's just the bottom line.
And the biggest thing is you have to have an understanding. And again, going back to the emotional part, and you got to ask the right questions. So I'll go back to the NIL deal. Did they ask all the right questions?
Right.
If we're going to get paid this amount of money, when is it going to come? Because everything, and honestly, the coaches don't really know because they're not a part of the collective. They can only say this is the potential, or this is what we're going to try to go get you, or, whatever. But you got to be able to ask those questions, in order to be able to assess and then be patient enough to say, at least, are you guys working towards that amount? And then understanding how that machine works, for every piece of the puzzle. So it's so many moving pieces now, so many different things. And every school, isn't going to be readily available to give that kind of money until the collective has all of those things in place. And I don't think, schools are saying, we're going to, give you this just because, and then have no intentions on giving it to you. Those things just probably take time. And if you don't know that going in, then it's easy to assume that, okay, well, they're just not giving it to us.
Right. Absolutely, man. Well, listen, Coach, I appreciate you giving us a little time out of your day. We're at the end of the show. If they don't have it, of course, you're a regular on the show. Give out your social medias real quick, because, you're always one of those guys, and I know your phone stays high, your DM stays full about these type of subjects. Give that out real quick before we sign out.
You guys can follow me on Facebook, SD Johnson. I'm probably the only SD Johnson on Facebook. If it's another one, don't follow him, because it's probably a fake account.
Yeah.
On Twitter, you can find me at Coast to Coast TC. So that's 2 T's at the end with a C. And Instagram, SD Johnson as well. Thank you guys. Definitely come follow me. A lot of great information. If you need help, I'm here to help.
Absolutely.
We are here to help.
Absolutely. Every week we're here to educate and elevate you right here on Your Mark Show from 11 to 12, live from the Fishbowl Radio Network. Before we get out of here, man, listen, the Guppy Awards are back up. We won New Show of the Year last year, and now we're trying to go for the gold. We're going for the gold now. There it is, man. If you look in the link, listen, you can vote now until October 22nd. It's going down. We want to be the top show right here on the Fishbowl Radio Network, live every week. The On Your Mark Show, powered and sponsored by Epic Sports Apparel. Go vote. Male Host of the Year, Show of the Year. Listen, we want to do it, man. There's a bunch of other great shows on the Fishbowl Radio Network. Tune in the rest of the week. You'll see them. But for myself, Coach Johnson, my guy Josh Butler down in San Antonio, we're out. Follow us on onthemarksports.com. Click the website. The magazine is up as well. We're dropping great content every week. If you're following us through the season, you'll have the latest on the high school football landscape right here in the state of Texas. Shout out to my guy Jay Paces, who's been one of the contributors, and JB this year to onthemarksports.com. Follow me on Twitter at MarkHen44, on the Mark Sports, or on Instagram at Mark_HEN44. Man, my guy Minor Mike's going to take us out. Shout out to my guy Scott Raps on the visuals. We out.